Very glad to have our next guest. I know that he's a busy man and he's traveling around the country, so his time is limited. His new book, The Right Side of History, How Reason and Moral Purpose Made the Great West, he's been making the rounds talking about it. And I was the subject of a little bit of controversy this last week, which we'll talk about. Mr. Ben Shapiro, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. How are you, dude?
I am doing all right. So we were talking before the break. I never know how to broach this subject. So let me because you never know if it's a sore spot. Like I talked with a fighter one time and asked him about a fight that was a loss for him. And I'm not saying this is comparable in that sense, but you could tell he got pissed. And I thought that was a good question. I thought it was compelling. And this was a heavyweight who didn't like me after that. So this happened on the BBC. I think we have some B-roll here. The guy's name is it Neil Brennan?
Andrew Neil.
Andrew Neil. Sorry. Wait, Neil Brennan was
right. Now I know.
Yeah. Well, that's the issue. I said Neil. I think Brennan was a fighter. I don't know who I'm thinking. Neil Brennan.
Maybe.
So listen, I think that a lot of the criticism there that's been lobbed against you, obviously, I think is unfair, and I think some of it is constructive. What's your overall view on this? Since people have been talking about it.
Yes, I mean, I think that there are certainly some things I regret about this interview. I tweeted out the stuff I regret about the interview, and then there's some stuff I really don't regret about the interview. The stuff that I regret is, I'm in the middle of a book tour and we're doing a lot of book interviews. And the producers for BBC approached us and they said, we want to have you on to discuss the book. And I figured, okay, normal book interview, even if it gets, a little bit antagonistic, that's totally fine. I mean, I just did an interview with Vox where Sean Illing opposes a lot of the ideas in the book. We did a long half-hour interview about it because he was asking questions about the book. So I figured, okay, no problem. It's a busy day, so we sit down.
I thought that was risky. I'll tell you, I read the Vox interview. Let me tell you why I thought it was risky, because it was in writing. It wasn't a video. And anytime that happens, especially with someone like you, where a lot of it is read through tone, I thought, ooh, they could make that a hatchet job. But I actually thought it came out pretty well. But it's not something I would do when I know it's just in print.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I'd rather do live video typically, not even tape,
right,
with the BBC. But in any case, so it was a lazy decision on my part. I didn't know anything about the guy who was interviewing me. I heard him in my ear, obviously. I have no idea who Andrew Neil is. I don't follow British politics all that closely, truthfully. Yeah. So we sit down and we start the interview, and his opening question is really antagonistic. He starts asking about the barbarity of pro-life positions, and he starts asking, isn't this Georgia policy bringing us back to the dark ages? He mischaracterizes the Georgia law itself. Right. And I figure, okay, I know who this guy is, obviously. Idiotic move. I have no idea who the guy is. That's the entire problem. And so I assume, just like any journalist who asks that sort of question in the U.S., this person is on the left. Well, it turns out that Andrew Neil is apparently famously on the right there, although I assume not on the social right there. So I start pushing at him, prodding at him there. So mistake number one, didn't know who he is, and that was a mistake. And, you got to own that. I tweeted out even before the interview aired that I had no idea who he was. I apologized for saying that he was on the left when he is not, in fact, on the left. So that was
I'm somewhat familiar with him, even though I just got his name wrong. I said Neil. I need to find out who Neil Brennan is, because Neil Brennan is a person and is in my head. There's Chris Brennan was a fighter who I trained with once, and then there's a guy named Neil Brennan. No idea where. But I know who he is a little bit because, obviously in Canada, we're a little bit more closely tied with the parliamentary system.
Right.
He is more conservative, but he is kind of a dick. So that part you didn't get wrong, but continue.
Right. So that brought us to the second part of the interview. Well, he eventually starts basically browbeating me with the idea that I've said things that I regret in the past. Well, yeah, I mean, so have most of us who've been in politics. I have a column that I referenced twice in the interview. This interview, by the way, is about 16 minutes. And so he mentions all this stuff. I say twice. I've got an entire column. It's famous. I posted it online, all about this sort of stuff that I've said that I regret or that I've explained. And he won't allow me to explain any of the comments, and I start to get frustrated. And this is when I make the second thing that I regret, which is I went to the ego play. So again, based on the assumption that this guy is just some BBC schmuck and not a famous guy, I say, I'm famous and you're not, which is always a bad move, always a dumb move. And of course, I regret that one. Yeah. That was stupid also. Now, here's the thing I don't regret. There's no question he was badly motivated, right? I mean, the entire line of questioning was, you're a bad person, I'm going to smear you, you're a bad person. If I start to answer, he interrupts, you're a bad person, over and over and over. Here's all the bad things that you've said. And I keep saying, yeah, I've said things I regret. Yeah, here's how I explain this one. Right. He keeps referencing a column I wrote in 2012. I say, can you ask me something from the last 5 years? Or why don't you read? I don't remember everything I've written.
Well, Bill Maher did that exact same thing. He had his flashcards and he was bringing up old tweets from you. I mean, this is something they always do.
Yeah, and again, the thing was I wasn't in that headspace. So it's funny. People are like, Shapiro gets blown away in debate. Well, this was an interview, right? It was scheduled as an interview. Like, if it were a debate, you prep like it's a debate. I wasn't prepped. The failure of preparation is my fault. So it's a successful ambush for him, so win for him. Here's the thing I don't regret. Getting up and walking out, I don't regret for a heartbeat. I do not regret it for a second. The fact is that he was badly motivated. He was looking for the gotcha moment. he felt he got the gotcha moment just by asking all these questions and refusing to listen to the answers. He didn't ask a single question about the substance of the book at all.
Right.
It took him 17 minutes to get to the point where he apparently was about to ask that question. And I felt like, you know what, I do have a basic rule, and this is true in any conversation. I've said this 1,000 times in my speeches. My basic rule is when someone is intent on defaming your character, you have no obligation to continue with the conversation. That's what he was doing.
Right.
And so I was out. And by the way, this idea that this was just an honest line of questioning, his own producer tweeted out after this whole thing was over that this is why you should have people like Shapiro on so that you can basically attack their character. I mean, he tweeted that out himself. So yeah,
isn't it kind of funny that they're
I don't regret getting up and walking out because, again, it was an ambush. So he gets a win for the ambush.
Can I offer, while I have you in a mode here, while I have you in a mode talking about like the breaking down of ego, if I may offer a little word of it. The only thing I would say about your walkout, this is the performance art of it. In my opinion, if you're going to walk out, walk out. Like light off a big old mouth cannon and walk away laughing. Because at that point, you were trying to walk out respectfully. You know, you were pissed, but you just be like, you know what, dude? You know, no, go yourself, and you walk out. That's how if you're going to walk out. To me, if you're going to walk out, make it a serious walkout, just short of slapping your Donegar on the table.
I know.
But
I was trying to be, here's the thing, and this is the part that always kills you. I was trying to be polite even at the end, you know, and then I tried to be polite after that by kind of joking about, okay, well, you got me, Ben Shapiro destroyed and all of that. And apparently politeness is not in vogue. But again, I'll freely admit this one went like crap for me. It was not a great show.
I didn't think it went like crap. I just think that people are people who don't enter the arena, they're always looking to fault someone who does, right? They're always looking for you to fall. And I would say it's certainly not your best performance, but I don't really think it was. I think the guy was being a dick. Yeah. And I don't think the left can have it both ways where they say, well, in the BBC, in the UK, or they talk about Canada. I go, oh, you're talking about unbiased journalism in Canada where it's funded by the government, where our prime minister literally promised $150 million to the CBC if he won. Surprise, he won. No, you can't say that they're unbiased, that it's true journalism, that they ask tough questions, and then have an interview where he spends 14 minutes on your Twitter and not on the book. That's also not substantive.
Listen, I agree with all that, but you know, I figure that, listen, I hold myself to a higher standard, and so if I don't live up to that standard, then that's the way that it goes, right? I mean, that's my fault. Again, my first rule is you got to research the person who you're debating. My fault was I didn't, and so you get shown up if you don't research the person you're debating. That's a mistake, and
people do this all the time, when it's like Cenk Uygur, like, oh, this is what you know about Shapiro. I'm like, hold on, Cenk, you were on stage with him, and your own audience started booing you when Ben was debating you. This is what bothers me, is the pig pile on people. Or people have said this about me because we do Change My Mind, which isn't a debate. They go, oh, when you're not debating high school kids. Like, well, hold on a second. We've debated professors, scientists on the show. Right. Naomi Wolf has come on this show, and I know that you have. If people can run a search, people just want to mischaracterize.
Yeah, no, this is now you're hitting on a pet peeve of mine, which is all the media coverage, which was, he'll debate college students, but as soon as he gets in the ring, okay, I've had on the Sunday special, Andrew Yang, we discussed UBI. We were adversarial about it, but friendly. I've had on Sam Harris. I've had a public debate with him on his own podcast. I was on Bill Maher's show. I've debated Cenk publicly. I've debated Black Lives Matter publicly, socialist Shama Sawant publicly. I've debated gun control publicly. I've debated more than pretty much anybody that I know, people on the left, and I have discussions with people on the left so frequently that literally the day that this interview was taped, that interview with Vox came out, right? And again, Sean Illing disagrees with me, but it was a perfectly nice, cordial conversation in which we decided to get to the issues at the heart of the book. And I think, by the way, if you want an informative back and forth on the book, that's a good place to start. So, that the interview,
Now I feel bad because I haven't asked a whole lot about the book. I'm the bad guy here. I'm not a journalist, but I haven't asked about the book. Tell us about the book, because the book obviously is about kind of how to have these conversations. For people who don't know, I think we have an overlay here of your book. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the book is basically asking the question, why is it that we live in the most prosperous, freest time in world history, and yet we're sort of beating each other up? And the answer is that we don't have shared fundamental universal beliefs anymore. What were those shared fundamental universal beliefs at the heart of Western civilization? Why are they good? Why did they produce this good, free, prosperous world? And what are those beliefs that we should be reacquainted with? And why did we lose those universal principles? So it really is sort of a pop history of philosophy in 250 pages or less. It's not the world's easiest read, but I think it's pretty informative and pretty useful. And I think it answers some important questions, more important questions than how about this crappy tweet you sent in 2010?
Though those questions can be funny, and if they ever pull mine up, I'll just have to. My response will just have to be, "Did I write that? That sounds like something I would say." Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's why I'll never run for office. They'll hold the standard. They'll hold a standard of a joke of comedy against me, and that's happened before too, where people have taken statements, and I go, "Well, you can't take that statement literally, just like you can't take a statement I made as a drunk Nick Nolte dressed as Rosa Parks in a sketch seriously." There's a difference between the commentary and the bits. It's a little bit alarming that you just used the word Western civilization because, as we were reading on Salon, that's a dog whistle for white supremacy.
White supremacists. Yeah, exactly. Well, as we all know, white supremacists, that's my thing. I mean, it is. I will notice a slight media imbalance. So the interview at the BBC got, all this coverage. That's fine, totally fine. The week before, the FBI arrested somebody for threatening to kill me and my family, and it got 5 stories, none of them from national publications.
Right,
so,
of course.
That's pretty, just worth noting.
Yeah, this does. I remember when we did the Crowder confronts of someone who threatened to, I think was it the one who firebombed, wanted to slash our tires or firebomb our van, and we confronted this person. We're like, "Hey, by the way, really quickly, we're not advocating violence. I just would really like it if you take down this call to bomb my team and my van." And the Austin Chronicle, the lady wrote like, "The taller, intimidating, muscular Steven Crowder intimidates this poor small transgender." I'm like, "Why didn't you mention that this person tried to bomb my van?" Or she's like, "Well, I did mention that you alleged that." No. Here it is. Here's the post. Like, well, I see that you're alleging that. No, this person says I did it. There really is a disproportional response of the media, kind of as we just covered this week with the top hoaxes of 2019. We have Brett Kavanaugh's a rapist, the Russia conspiracy hoax, Jussie Smollett, and then all of these other hate crimes. Hey, speaking of hate crimes, Tlaib, obviously from my wonderful home state of Michigan. This went back and forth this week where she talked about her, was it calming feeling? Yeah, calming feeling.
Yeah, calming.
When she thinks about the Holocaust. And people said people were saying conservatives had taken this out of context. When I read it in its entirety, I thought, well, that only makes it worse. Because she said, I get a calming feeling because I think of how we provided a safe haven, even though it was against our will, and obviously it stripped us of our humanity. So, well, hold on a second, you don't sound like a willing party here. What do you think is the accurate read on that when we remove the political ping pong?
So I don't think that her saying that the Holocaust gave her a calming feeling was her saying, yeah, I feel calm about the murder of 6 million Jews. That's obviously not what she's saying. The part of it that's bad is when she completely recasts the history in a way that is not only ahistorical but anti-historical. The Palestinian Arabs were the original inhabitants of the land. The Jews have no connection with the land. The only reason the state of Israel was created was because of the Holocaust. And then we Palestinian Arabs, we worked to integrate them and bring them in. Every aspect of this is just sheer crap. And the problem is that it does back the anti-Semitic narrative that the Jews have no place in Israel, that they are European colonialist implants, and that the Palestinian Arabs are the true victims when it comes to the foundation of the state of Israel, despite the fact that the Palestinian Arab leadership sought to work with Hitler to impose a final solution in the Middle East, despite the fact that the Palestinian Arabs worked with the British mandate to prevent Jewish immigration to Israel, to British mandate Palestine, in the middle of the Holocaust. And there she is proclaiming that the real victims in all of this were the Palestinian Arabs. I mean, again, it plays into an anti-Semitic narrative because she's an anti-Semite. But anybody who's reading the calming Holocaust thing in the way that I spoke about earlier, that obviously is a misread.
It's a misread, but I also don't understand why she said it. What does she mean by calming feeling?
I think that John Podhoretz had a great piece on this at Commentary. He basically said she thought she was saying something nice. Right? That saying the Holocaust is bad is saying something nice. So when she says that she had a calming feeling, she means the Holocaust is bad, but it makes me feel better about all of the evils that you did to me. When I think about the evils that were done to you and how we were the victims of you healing from that, makes me feel better. She thought she was saying something nice, but she's an anti-Semite. That's not really possible.
Well, I always thought, too, going back to the tweets, if someone were to pull out one of my old tweets, I think I had a tweet that was a joke like modern Islamic, it was about Islamic governments. Islam in this might have been 2016, basically Nazis who beat their wives. And people were like, well, how dare you make that comparison? Well, let's take Hamas. Let's take these organizations. If you don't think if they could exterminate Jews right now, if they had the ability to wage a new Holocaust, of course they would. And, they beat their wives. Nazis, I'm sure some of them did, but it was an exception, not the rule. We can give them that.
I'm not even going to go here, man. I am not even going to touch this.
People don't talk about the alliance between a lot of the Islamic world and the Nazis.
No, that is certainly true. Well, that is the point of Tlaib's idiocy. Now, the fact is that Hashim al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, he has, love letters from Himmler in the middle of the Holocaust, talking about, we really hope to wipe this Jewish threat off the planet, and thanks for your help. So that's pretty great.
And they were playing a game of telephone with tin cans and a string with Henry Ford. And he was like, what? Can I get in on this? And then people said, yeah, I guess that's true. Very notorious anti-Semite. Did you know that about Ford?
I didn't know that at all.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, really some pretty rough stuff when you look back.
You know what, dude? Honestly, I can't take this interview. I'm out. I gotta be gone.
Is this
We're done.
another walk-off?